I don't think he's going to implode. He's been endorsed by so many people. He's never been a head coach, but neither was Bob Stoops or Lincoln Riley for that matter. Yeah, it's definitely possible to get Lebby. I think absolutely. Um, let's see. Yeah, so I haven't seen what's been announced, but um, so I haven't seen what's been announced. I've been on here for the last hour or so, but it would be nice to. I think Lebby for me is the number one offensive guy out there. So if they can get him, secure him, I think that's huge. That's definitely huge, without a doubt. So let me scroll here and see what some of the questions that you have now. Yeah, we're going to hire. I feel very confident that Oklahoma's going to hire a defensive coordinator. Not necessarily sold on the head coach being a play caller. Yes, he can be involved in the game plan. Yes, he can have some influence over what the play call looks like, and listen in and could even take over from time to time if he needed to. But I'm not a big advocate of him being the defensive coordinator from a play calling perspective. I am an advocate of him being a linebackers coach. I think if he decided that he wanted to do that, if he then, but I think how do you look at that? I think you lose Odom if you bring him if he decides to coach the linebacker. So I think that's going to be something that's very interesting. So Todd Bates and Brandon Hall are the two big names that I've heard some stuff about Jim Leonard. For those that don't know Brandon Hall, he is the defensive coordinator at Troy. He was with Oklahoma previously when Venables was the defensive coordinator here, so there was a lot of familiarity within the two. He's actually the interim head coach for Troy right now until there's somebody named. So I think he would be a good choice. I think he would be a good choice because of his affinity on the special team side that Oklahoma has really been lacking. I think they were a little bit better when Shane Beamer was here, but then this year obviously they weren't anywhere near as good as they've been in the past. So I think a dynamic special teams. Um, and when I say not as good, from a punt coverage perspective and from a return game perspective, they haven't been anywhere near as good. We've got two of the best specialists, in the game with Burkich from a field goal kicking perspective. I think he's been solid. And then Turk, one of the best punters in the country. But I think the missing link there is that. And then Todd Bates he's again has a lot of familiarity with Venables. He has been the defensive line coach at Clemson over the last 6 or 8 years. And so I think that would be a good hire, a very, very dynamic recruiter, one of the best recruiters in the country. So there's good and bad parts on either one. I think Hall is a guy that you could probably get fairly easy, would jump at the chance to be the DC at Oklahoma, and then Bates maybe a little bit of a tougher sell because I think there's a chance that he could get that coordinator job at Clemson. So depends on what he wants to do. Does he want to be the coordinator there at Clemson and follow Venables, or does he want to be with Venables and be part of that system at Oklahoma? So Jim Leonard is a guy that I've heard. I think that's really kind of more on the outside looking in type of situation, but will be a great hire without a doubt. Joe Brady is a guy that has a potential to be the offensive coordinator. The one thing that I have against Brady is everything that I've heard is he doesn't love the grind of the year long recruiting, and I think recruiting is such a big part of such a part of this program and such a part of college football and athletics just in general is you got to have a guy that's really good and really excited about that. Other than that, I think he would be a good choice as well, but that's the concern that I have. Strength and conditioning coach is going to be outside of the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. To me, I think it's the biggest hire. It would be an absolute home run hire if Oklahoma was able to get Tommy Moffitt from the previous strength and conditioning coach from LSU. I think he is a I think he knows what kind of athlete Oklahoma needs to have going into the SEC. So I think you build your athletes. Obviously, even if Oklahoma's in the Big 12 for 2 more years, I think you build your athletes according to what they need to be at the at the next level at the SEC where Oklahoma is at. So let's see. Let's go. Yes, no one individual is bigger than the program, without a doubt. Um, I see some comments about Dan Mullen. Absolutely not. Now this would be funny. We talked about this, Tijuana, a little bit in a group chat that I'm in about this, and um, you know I don't know that Oklahoma would have enough money to bring in a guy, bring in a guy like Lebby and also bring in a guy like Dan Lanning um, over to Oklahoma from Georgia. I think he's in the neighborhood of 1.7 million at Georgia right now, and unless Oklahoma is making a much different change than I'm accustomed to or ready to talk through, I don't know that Oklahoma has. Maybe if Oklahoma was already in the SEC, had that money there, but I would be surprised if they're able to pull a guy like Lanning over to Oklahoma. Let's see. Yeah, again, he would definitely bring some. I think he would bring some guys over without a doubt. Brian Breesy, yeah, I think that would be outstanding. I would be extremely excited about that. So there's been some thoughts about could again, the expensiveness of this would be hard. But if you had a guy like Joe Brady could be the passing game coordinator, and then Lebby could be the offensive coordinator, and then work in tandem with one another, that would be that would be interesting. I think that would be very very expensive for Oklahoma. OC will be Lebby. Our DC should Dragon one is good in the secondary. Yeah, the secondary coach is going to be something that's interesting. Ryan, we're getting ready to have an article that's going to publish for Last Word on College Football that talks about some potential guys that might move into a position at Oklahoma. I think a secondary coach, a defensive backs coach is very interesting because Oklahoma has lost Grinch, Oklahoma has lost Manning, the two guys that coached the secondary, and a lot of people would say, and I'm one of them, that's not a big loss on either side of the ball, on either one of those, based on how well or how lack thereof Oklahoma has played in the secondary. So I think that's going to be interesting. There's a couple of guys. Personally, I would love the idea of Corey Raymond. Corey Raymond is the defensive backs coach at LSU. Not sure if he's going to be retained or has been retained by Brian Kelly. He's kind of the originator of this DBU movement at LSU. I would think that he would be great. To bring over. Dante Williams is another guy that is the interim coach at USC, has a lot of inroads on the West Coast to get that Cali connection back. So those are a couple of the guys um, that I could see. Defensive back coach at Clemson is a guy that that could move over as well. So those are three names that I've heard on the defensive back side that could possibly be there. Let's see. Let's see if any questions we have here. A lot of negative comments um, about Riley, which is kind of funny. And if anybody's on Twitter and have seen this TBOW reference, just kind of look it up and ask around. It's kind of funny. No, I don't necessarily, Tony. I don't think he's tired of Kiffin. I think this is just an opportunity, that he would jump at based on his relationship, his previous time in Oklahoma. It's his alma mater, really close to Joe John Finley. So I think a lot of it really kind of makes sense. Definitely agree. agree, JD. I don't think Caleb would go to USC, honestly. Jackson Dart is already there, and I think that's who you're mentioning, Gatorade All American. I think if he's here, he's the unquestioned. I think he's the unquestioned guy that will be the guy for Oklahoma next year. No doubt about it. I think if he, for whatever reason, if he leaves, look out for Dylan Gabriel, a guy in the portal, UCF guy. He would be a guy that would be perfect in Levy's system. He's a rental for a year. I mean, that's the only thing that you hate about that. But I mean, I think he's a guy that Oklahoma would look long and hard at if Oklahoma's not able to secure Caleb Williams. But I think, at the time of the announcement, I was heavily leaning towards him probably going. Now I'm more on the side. I think he'll probably stay without a doubt. Well, not without a doubt, but I think he is. I think he's a guy that's trending towards staying, but I don't know if he'll officially stay. Hey Cam, thanks for coming on, brother. I appreciate you. I understand. We're praying for you, or anything you need. I'm here for you. Reach out to me. Yep, I think there was some nervousness from Lincoln Riley's perspective. Then that you're right on the beat here. I think he would have. I think he probably was a little bit nervous about Oklahoma going to the SEC. Jesse, you're preaching to the choir, brother. This is the thing that I have talked about over and over and over this week is Oklahoma progressively got worse with Riley. As you mentioned, the loss against Georgia should have absolutely won that game. Could have made a comment that could have made an argument that Oklahoma should have won the national championship that year if they have some sort of semblance of a defense. Was less competitive against Bama, was non-competitive against LSU, and then to your point, didn't make the playoffs last year and didn't even win the Big 12 this year. So, yeah, I think the negative progression was a big part. Is it possible? Yeah, Brady is absolutely in play without a doubt. I think Brady is in play. I think he's probably the second choice. I think Lebby is the guy that they're going to offer first. And if he says no or doesn't have the interest, then certainly, I think Joe Brady is second. Cliff, I think he'll go get a DC. He'll be very involved in the game plan and be very involved, but I don't think that he will run the defense. No one can argue that Oklahoma didn't regress under Riley unless they have. Yeah, you're exactly right, Ryan. Good question here about Kennedy Brooks. I would expect him not to be back, but at the same time, from everything I've heard, that he didn't participate in any of the kind of senior type situation stuff with Oklahoma. So he could potentially come back. Would love to see him come back, but I would guess that he's probably gone. Especially, Oklahoma wasn't able to run the ball very well, but still he got over 1,000 yards this year. So he had a really good season for Oklahoma. Hope this is a joke. Joe Brady would be my pick as offensive coordinator. I like Lebby a little bit more. I think from the recruiting perspective, I think that puts him over the top. But Brady would be a close second without a doubt. Tommy Moffitt is the guy that I would just love. I would love that almost as much as the Venables hire. I think that would just be an outstanding opportunity for Oklahoma. Without him, I think maybe they make a call to Schmitty. Other than that, I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of a good feel about who might be another guy that they would look at. This has been floated around as a potential opportunity, without a doubt. Yep, I think Major will be back. He'll definitely be part of that running back room with Eric Gray, Major, Gavin Sawchuk, coming in as a true freshman as well. Will be a part of that conversation as well. Let's see. Yeah, I think one of the big things is, I touched on that a little bit ago, that Oklahoma would need to hire specifically some guys that are really good recruiters, especially in the SEC area. Um, I think a guy, I think a guy like Todd Bates would be a good dynamic recruiter. I think if Raymond is able to come over as a defensive back coach, as a dynamic recruiter as well. So I think that's going to be something that is understood by Venables, and Venables is about as good as a recruiter as it gets as well. So, um, yep, not necessarily saying that he can't, Tony, but I think he's just talked about not. Talked about not being a guy that he really that was interested in the grind of the recruiting game. Let's see. No, there's a lot of comments about Mullen. No. When assignments are they want? Okay. Pete Golding is interesting. I don't, he's probably going to be in line for a head coaching job at some point here pretty soon. Beanbo is on the road recruiting for Oklahoma, so he's not with Riley yet. So I think he's a guy that I would hope that Oklahoma is able to retain. He's one of the position coaches Oklahoma probably would retain, possibly. Who do you think is better, Venables or Riley? I mean, I think it remains to be seen from a head coaching perspective. Obviously, we'll see how the next few years go before we can kind of answer that question. Got a question for you, Texas and the SEC. So part of that flower is Texas is going to have to give up their Longhorn network for entrance into the SEC. Gary Patterson, yeah, that could be a possibility. I think there's a chance that he may go to Texas in some capacity that I've heard. That's interesting, Tony. Derek Mason is a guy that I haven't heard much of, but I think that wouldn't be a bad hire either. Right? He did a great job with Auburn's defense this year. We do not have a special teams coach on staff, so that's why I like the Brandon Hall opportunity to come to Oklahoma, just to have that special teams knowledge and what he's been able to do. Riley didn't have a special teams coach, but I think Shane Beamer facilitated that role. Which recruits do you think? And I don't really, I haven't really followed obviously the Ole Miss or Clemson recruiting, so I don't know. I'll have to do some diligence on that, Jesse, just to see if there's any guys that may potentially be considering flipping if when and if Venables when Venables is announced, and then if Lebby comes with them. I agree. I think Caleb's if Levy's here, and I think Joe Brady, he probably stays as well. Talked about Beanbo a little bit earlier. He's a guy that's kind of up in the air, but a guy that I would like to see him. I would like to see him stay. Absolutely, without a doubt. I think he would be seen as a reason to stay. So I don't necessarily think that we would hire a QB coach, Jesse. I think Lebby and or Brady would be that quarterback coach. He was the quarterback coach at Ole Miss. He's been the old quarterback coach at Carolina. He's the quarterback coach at LSU as well for Brady. One thing to remember about the quarterback situation, Dylan Gabriel, was that Lebby was previously at UCF, so he he potentially could have that inroads should, kind of the worst case scenario happen, and he not he not come over.